Hey everybody, welcome on our channel. In this video we are gonna see, what if Naruto got exiled and unlocked a power to change the galaxy? Part 3. If you are new on the channel, don't forget to subscribe our channel and like the video too. So without wasting any more time, let's start the story. Necesti and Tayuyu were listening to reports from the surface marshals. Sir, the bunker in Sector 3 is under our control, and as we speak, I am overseeing the group assigned to watching the civilians, the surface marshal of Sector Armies 2, 3 and 5 reported. How many casualties have you sustained? Tayuyu asked. We lost 400,000 while trying to transverse through a minefield in Sector 3, and another 20,000 fighting for the civilian bunker. The command room became deathly silent, and the surface marshal became fearful for his life. He flinched when Tayuyu's right hand made a clenching motion and fell dead from a blaster bolt to the back of the head, courtesy of Arano. Excellent work, take over command of sector armies under the Cadaver's command, Necesti said, while laying the other surface marshal who was sweating profusely. Got it, boss. Arano said before cutting off the holo terminal. Is there something you wish to say? Meet Necesti's cold voice caused the color to drain from the surface marshal's face and cold sweat to form on his brow. We lost almost TW twice that, my lord. Please don't kill me, the surface marshal begged. I'm not going to kill you. You're going to kill yourself, Marshal, or I'll personally see to it that your entire bloodline is sold into slavery. Well, Necesti didn't get to finish because the surface marshal shot himself in the head with his holdout blaster. I should have told him that I was going to do it even if he did commit suicide. Oh well, Necesti said with a shrug. Hey you there, Necesti said to one of the officers that was moving the surface marshal's body out of the way. Me, my lord. Yes, you, congratulations on your promotion. If you fail me like the corpse did, your family will have to worry about more than slavery. Am I clear? Necesti said, starting off nice then ending with his voice as cold as Ilum. Understood, my liege. Necesti nodded and shut off the holo terminal. Patholv I, follower of Malak capital city, Crypt Tunneler. The Crypt Tunneler was currently resting under the leader of followers of Malak's palace. The tunnels that it had dug were covered in necrodermis from top to bottom, and there were at least 30 Necron warriors, 20 DEATHMARKS snipers, 10 immortals, 5 lichguards, 3 Canoptech wraiths, 2 flayed ones, 1 destroyer lord, 1 Necron lord, and a Necron overlord surrounding the Crypt Tunneler. Necron warriors were and are the primary infantry troops of the soulless robotic Necrons. They were created from the majority of the Necrontyr. The Necron armies Necesti has stored in the Pride are not of Necrontyr decent people who agreed to be bound to the will of their star gods, the terrible entities known as the C'tan. In battle, their massive numbers and superior firepower overwhelm their enemies before they retreat back to their tomb complexes, awaiting the next call to battle from their Necron lord. The skeletal forms of Necron warriors are a spine-chilling sight to behold, kinetic projectiles and blasters bolts more times than not bounced harmlessly from their metallic limbs. The Gauss flare which they wield is no less terrifying, as it strips its targets to atoms, dissolving skin and muscle in a heartbeat and then disintegrating bone until nothing remains. Deathmarks are the highly skilled snipers and assassins of Necesti's Necron forces, appearing from apparently nowhere and striking with terrible precision. The name is fitting. Once given the hunter's mark, a Deathmark's targets are almost certain to meet their death scant moments later. Like most Necrons, the Deathmark's technology lies far beyond the realm of human comprehension, and they can effectively phase in and out of normal space-time at will. Their victims will assume that they have been ambushed, that the Deathmarks teleported onto the battlefield. The reality is that they were already there, waiting out of phase for just the right moment to slaughter their victims. Few are lucky or unlucky enough to ever encounter Deathmarks and live to tell the tale. In appearance, Deathmarks are more akin to Necron immortals in the craftsmanship of their mechanical bodies. They are distinguished by a single, large green glowing eye and the arcane orbs projecting from their spines. These orbs flare with an unnatural light as a Deathmark utilizes its occult powers to mark their targets. In keeping with their role, Deathmarks display a propensity for stealth that is all but unique amongst the Necron ranks. Moving as they do with the eerie silence that is the hallmark of the Necron legions, Deathmarks can be surprisingly stealthy in their slow, deliberate movements. Immortals are those few victims who were the first of the unlucky victims to unwillingly give up their flesh and embrace the necrodermis and their C'tan. For this, they were rewarded by being turned into immortals. In life, immortals were the professional soldiery of whatever place Necesti saw fit to abduct them from. In death, they surpassed the warriors in nearly every way. Possessed of even more resilient frames, Necron immortals prove almost impervious to small arms. Their training and experience in combat survived the process of biotransference undiminished, and immortals seem to have retained a brighter spark of intellect than their less favored brethren, although only in regard to the practice of war. Outside of combat, immortals display about as much personality as a rock, and more times than not even less than that. Immortals are typically armed with Gauss blasters, weapons even deadlier than the Gauss flares used by warriors. The Necron Lichguard are the elite protectors and emissaries of the Necron nobility. In order to serve as a bulwark against those who would harm their charge, Lichguards were gifted with the highest quality of living metal bodies, equal in resilience and power to those inhabited by the lords and overlords they protect. In addition to serving as wardens, Lichguards often act as messengers and envoys for their masters. In order to better serve in this capacity, the personality and intellect of the Lichguards was preserved through the process of biotransference to a much greater extent than the rank and file. As with other Necrons, Lichguards fulfill the same roles in undeath as they did in life, and, as with other Necrons, the capability for disobedience has been removed. Owing to their powerful frames, Lichguards are taller and broader than Necron warriors, with broad shoulder blades and a pronounced spine that extends above their heads. Reflecting their status and, perhaps, their individual preferences, Lichguards are often adorned with decorative headgear and segmented metal tabards. Lichguards are typically armed with war scythes, massive polearms with blades sheathed in a highly advanced and devastating power field. Backed up by the formidable strength of a Lichguard, a war scythe can split even the most resilient of tank armor. Some will also carry hyperphase swords and dispersion shields, which are marginally less powerful, but offer increased protection. The Canoptek Wraith is one of the more sophisticated units employed by the forces of the Necrons. Canoptek Wraiths prowl the corridors of Nekesti's secret fortresses, gliding silently through the dark corridors, guarding against intrusion, and ensuring the safety of its master's most important items, captives, and darkest secrets. These grotesque floating killers lack legs or body except for a serpentine spinal column and float over the battlefield using anti-gravity technology like ghosts. Their wide, hunched shoulders support a leering skull face and long, whip-like arms that wield necrodermis scalpel blades for fingers and a nightmare array of surgical implements. Moving with unnatural fluidity, Canoptek Wraiths are fearsome in close combat, but what makes a Wraith such a fearful combatant, however, is the advanced phase shifter housed within its durable frame. This dimensional destabilization matrix allows a Canoptek Wraith to selectively phase parts of itself, whether that be momentarily phasing its body to avoid a strike, or even phasing its vicious claws, in order to bypass armor and rip into the flesh of enemies. This phase-shifting ability, which is based on the standard Necron phasing technology that they use to travel across the galaxy, allows Wraiths to avoid physical damage from weapons, or to even move through solid objects. Unknown to all but Nekesti, Canoptek Wraiths were in their previous lives were the murderers and psychopaths of the criminals that he received from the Republic before their eternal entombment within their cold metallic husks. When a Wraith finds its victim, it lets out an ear-shattering screech that serves two purposes: to disorientate its victim and alert nearby Wraiths to the presence of an intruder or victim if they are guarding a fortress. Blade Ones are twisted and ghoulish terrors afflicted by an ancient infection that act as specialized close combat troops who appear from an unknown pocket dimension of their hideous kind to join the Necron armies in battle, though never by invitation from the Necrons themselves. The pocket dimension was made by Nekesti to keep them from eating other Necrons when he's not around to control them, and even then he has to keep a constant watch on them to ensure they don't kill other Necrons. These loathsome creatures were some of the sickest and most fucked up of murderers and psychopaths who managed to retain some of their original consciousness when they were transferred into their living metallic bodies of necrodermis, but were cursed with a terrible disease, manifesting a hunger for flesh that cannot be satisfied and will eventually drive them to madness. Advancing before a Necron force, these two yet terrifyingly agile automatons excel at infiltrating and spreading terror like a plague within the ranks of their foes. They are quite capable melee fighters and make use of flensing blades that extend from their fingers and can flay a man alive in seconds. Thin and wiry, they habitually adorn themselves with the still wet pieces of skin and hide they have stripped from their victims, leaving behind the skinned corpses to sow fear and confusion. In such a state they are a terrifying sight to behold, so much so that enemy combatants lose their nerve when they see pieces of old squad mates hanging from the undying machines approaching their lines. In addition to their wicked claws, some flayed ones utilize Necron disruption field technology that allows them to rip even armored vehicles apart. The Necron Destroyer Lord is a sentient member of the Necron Elite, a former Necron Lord or Overlord who has fallen prey to the madness of the Necron Destroyers. Even the Necron nobility are not safe from the madness that consumes the Destroyers. When a Necron Lord or Overlord succumbs, a great threat to all life is born. Ironically, the only reason the forces of the is not aware of the extent of this threat is precisely because these Destroyer Lords are so aptly named. No one has borne witness to the atrocities committed by these steel harbingers of apocalypse and lived, and so it can only be guessed at the threat stirring on barren worlds scattered across the galaxy. While many Necron Lords and Overlords are afflicted by eccentricities, the insanity that consumes the mind of a Destroyer Lord is something else entirely. Like other destroyers, destroyer lords modify their bodies and minds so that they might be better suited to their overarching purpose, to cleanse the stars of all life. All this most often includes the attachment of an anti-gravity suspension platform in place of legs. Destroyer lords tend to forego the ranged weaponry favored by other destroyers in favor of melee weapons. The Warsith is a particular favorite, as a destroyer lord hovering above the heads of his enemies can take full advantage of the reach afforded by these massive melee weapons. Curiously, destroyer lords forego the decorative finery commonly worn by Necron royalty. Whether this is representative of their single-minded obsession, an intentional statement, or a simple matter of practicality, none can say, for the destroyer lords are avoided by their former peers as much as the other destroyers. And are not keen to engage in conversation, except to learn the location of potential targets. The Necron Lord serves as the commander and energy supply for the much larger Necron armies, composed of the standard Necron warriors. A Necron Lord was once a powerful force users that hailed from a clan of powerful dark side users that crossed Necesti, who slaughtered the bulk of them, while capturing the rest. The ones that he didn't torture were the most powerful and strong-willed of the clan of. Dark side users were granted the honor of maintaining their full sentience in exchange for the capability to commit treason and disobey orders. As a high-ranking member of Necesti's Necron army, they control legions of Necrons. Clad in crumbling vestments and wielding ancient arcane staff weapons, the Necron Lord is a chilling sight to behold on the battlefield as they direct their Necron warriors in unnatural silence. Of all Necron Lords, a Necron Overlord is by far the most powerful and dangerous. At his command are uncountable legions of Necron warriors, terrifying war machines, and a vast array of devastating weaponry that could shatter entire worlds given half the chance. When he marches to war, the Necron Overlord does so with the surety of victory. He has cogitated and calculated every possible outcome in the ensuing conflict and formulated strategies to ensure that everything goes to plan. Only the most unlikely situations can outfox him, and only the most potent foes have any chance of beating him in combat. Weapons glance off his armor or simply pass straight through him as he shifts in and out of reality, using the Necron's phase-shifting technology. In return, his own attacks are brutally meticulous as he severs heads, shatters armor and pulverizes his foes with every swing of his ancient blade. Should Necesti ever allow a Necron Overlord rise to the position of Pharaoh and ruler of an entire sector, then few will have the strength to stand before his might. If Necesti was honest with himself, he was taking a big-ass risk in including the Destroyer, since it was the only Necron unit in his army that could attack him or other Necrons at any time. The only time he deployed them in massive numbers is when he wanted entire systems cleansed of all life for reason only he knew. Ayuya stood next to Necesti, hands on her hips as she looked over the abominations that stood or floated before her and her younger cousin. There's only 72 of the fuckers, and what the fuck is up with those? Ayuya points to the flayed ones. Fuckers, they look like they want to wear my face like a mask. Necesti puts a flashlight under his face. They'll do a lot more than that, my dear. They'll wear your blood-soaked skin like a coat, eat your organs, and your skeleton like a cape. Necesti wills one of the flayed one to walk toward Ayuya, but was cut into many pieces before it could get close enough to grab her. Keep those fucking twisted fucking fucked up fucking abominations a fucking way from me, or I swear I'll fucking slice and fucking dice them like I did that one. The creeped out redhead yelled while waving her lightsabers around wildly. It's going to take more than that to destroy him, my dear Ginger, and I think he's mad, Necesti said while putting his flashlight away and pointed to the flayed one that Ayuya cut up. The flayed one was already fully repaired and blankly looking at Ayuya with "I'll see you in your dreams" type of look. Ayuya gave the flayed one a "try me bitch" look. Necesti, who was watching the exchange, was wondering if he made a mistake in allowing the flayed ones to retain certain emotions. As much as this amuses me, I want this planet enslaved by yesterday, so Necrons, your Ctan commands you to kill everything in the structure above us. So chop chop, he commanded. The Necrons, with arms minus destroyer lords, saluted. Necesti warped into the palace above them. Necesti offered his hand to Ayuya so that he could them into phase into the palace, since Ayuya still had trouble using the technique for long-range phasing. Ayuya grabbed her cousin's hand and she instantly felt her body being broken down into the force. Alice, with the flayed ones. The flayed ones were lurking in the shadows, created massive pillars that adored the dimly lit room. Their footsteps unheard by the unfortunate soldiers guarding the room. Flesh. Much flesh. Great feast. One who kill most get most flesh. Must please Ctan's lust for flesh, the flayed ones said while communicating via telepathy due to their lack of moving jaws and voice boxes. Sneaking behind the guard nearest to it, the flayed one who Ayuya cut up lunged at the guard, impaling him on its knife-like claws before the foul stench of its body could alert him to its presence, electing a pained and terrified scream that alerted the other guards that they weren't alone. The guards all turned toward the source of the sound and that they saw traumatized them. The flayed one was ripping off chunks of their fellow soldiers' flesh off and smearing the chunks of flesh over its unmoving jaws, causing blood to drip down its teal necks and dribbling through its already blood-stained ribs and pooling at its feet. Another scream broke them out of their horror. Not even hesitating, they opened fire at the source of the scream, proliferating the second abomination with holes and severing its head before swinging around and doing the same with the other abomination, seemingly killing them. The 20 soldiers split up and moved over the unmoving bodies to make sure they were dead. When both groups were standing over the dead bodies, the bodies sprung into action and ran 2 soldiers through each and cutting another 2 each in half. "Retreat, hold them of Ak," the leader of the soldiers yelled before a knife-like claw was stabbed through his neck and a steel head colliding with his skull, shattering it and turning his brain into goo that the flayed one smeared across his face. The soldiers turned tail and ran. The flayed ones didn't follow and instead decided to make a new cape and clothing out of their kills. But Nekesti and Taiyuya used the slaughter that the Necrons were doing to get to the throne room. They now stood outside of the massive doors that led to the throne room. They were going to force push the door open when Nekesti's comlink beeped. The blonde Sith answered the comlink and the holographic form of Tech appeared. "Master, I has a message of dire importance that you should know." Nekesti beeped an eyebrow and asked, "Are you going to tell me?" "Master, what do you know of the Sickness? This is a real thing in Star Wars lore. There's also an entire book about it called Red Harvest." The spy droid asked. The sickness was an infectious viral agent created through the powers of Sith alchemy that attacked biological tissue and transformed its victims into undead monstrosities. The disease was originally created by the Sith Lord Darth Dreer on Odyssey Foston some 4,000 years ago and was intended to grant immortality to its crafter. Dreer's initial experiments resulted in failure, and the Sith Lord himself fell victim to his creation, and over 1,000 years later, during the period of unrest following the Great Galactic War, the Sith Lord Darth Scabrous attempted to recreate Dreer's disease in the hope that he would be able to succeed where his predecessor had failed. Scabrous likewise failed to create a path to immortality, and in the process unleashed the virus upon the unsuspecting students and staff of the Odyssey Foston Sith Academy. Before long, all of the Sith acolytes and masters on the planet died and were born anew as cannibalistic monstrosities, motivated only by the will to eat. Nekesti said in one breath before taking a deep breath of much-needed air and continued. The disease itself was created through the usage of Sith alchemy and activated by the Murakami orchid, a highly Force-sensitive black flower. Victims of the plague suffered numerous, extremely painful side effects prior to death and became mindless monstrosities post-mortem. The virus itself was fully self-aware and utilized the undead to spread the pathogen and either transform or eat any who were able to avoid infection. Due to the extremely quick rate of transmission and the difficulty of isolation, successful treatment of the disease was very rare, although one could be prevented from contracting the virus by injecting an antivirus intravenously. Those who were already infected had little chance of survival. I don't see how a now extinct disease is a matter of importance, since the ritual needs a Murakami orchid to make it any kind of threat to sentient life, and even then any Sith dumb enough to figure out the ritual would know that you need the still beating heart of a Force user that was bonded with the orchid to get anything useful from it. And didn't the Republic order that entire system the orchid came from to be destroyed? The normally playful Nekesti was replaced with Darth Nekesti, Dark Lord of the Reborn Sith. His mind was going faster than the speed of light, trying to figure out why this was even brought up to him. "Master, while I was going through the file from the GD Meatbags archives, I found a file titled Murakami Orchid and it was updated only 7 Galactic Standard months ago." The loyal spy droid explained the file contained the names of 5 GD that have bonded with the orchids and they have even more in storage at the GD temple on Coruscant. Nekesti was baffled at the stupidity of the GD. Why would the self-proclaimed peacekeepers of the galaxy would hold onto a literal ticking time bomb? Were that arrogant that they thought that in the case of another outbreak, they could stop it when they kept the fucking detonator in close proximity to the most populated planet in the galaxy. Boy, should he. The uncharacteristic cold glare that promised untold pain and agony made her rethink finishing her sentence. Returning to his thoughts, Nekesti pondered on what to do about the stupidity of the GD. Negotiation with the entirety of the GD Council would be futile. Those Pampas arrogate ingrates would be foolish. The green toad they call their Grandmaster is the only one that has a brain. I could just sack the GD temple. But that could cause a war, or I could do a hit and run on the temple. The GD nor the Republic will travel into the unknown regions, due to most of it being uncharted to their knowledge, Nekesti thought. Nekesti decided to return to the Pride to meditate on this matter. The Necrons would make it to the throne room, and the crypt tunneler collapsed the escape tunnels. The flayed ones were lurking in the shadows, created massive pillars that adored the dimly lit room. Their footsteps unheard by the unfortunate soldiers guarding the room. Flesh. Much flesh. Great feast. One who kill most get most flesh. Must please Ctan's lust for flesh, the flayed one said while communicating via telepathy due to their lack of moving jaws and voice boxes. Sneaking behind the guard nearest to it, the flayed one who Ta Yuyu cut up lunged at the guard, impaling him on its knife-like claws before the foul stench of its body could alert him to its presence, electing a pained and terrified scream that alerted the other guards that they weren't alone. The guards all turned toward the source of the sound and that they saw traumatized them. The flayed one was ripping off chunks of their fellow soldiers' flesh off and smearing the chunks of flesh over its unmoving jaws, causing blood to drip down its teal necks and dribbling through its already blood-stained ribs and pooling at its feet. Another scream broke them out of their horror. Not even hesitating, they opened fire at the source of the scream, proliferating the second abomination with holes and severing its head before swinging around and doing the same with the other abomination, seemingly killing them. The 20 soldiers split up and moved over the unmoving bodies to make sure they were dead. When both groups were standing over the dead bodies, the bodies sprung into action and ran 2 soldiers through each and cutting another 2 each in half. "Retreat, I'll hold them of Ak," the leader of the soldiers yelled before a knife-like claw was stabbed through his neck and a steel head colliding with his skull, shattering it and turning his brain into goo that the flayed one smeared across his face. The soldiers turned tail and ran. The flayed ones didn't follow and instead decided to make a new cape and clothing out of their kills. But Nekesti and Ta Yuya. Nekesti and Ta Yuya used the slaughter that the Necrons were doing to get to the throne room. They now stood outside of the massive doors that led to the throne room. They were going to force push the door open when Nekesti's comlink beeped. The blonde Sith answered the comlink and the holographic form of TECH appeared. "Master, I has a message of dire importance that you should know." Nekesti beeped an eyebrow and asked, "Are you going to tell me?" "Master, what do you know of the Sickness? This is a real thing in Star Wars lore. There's also an entire book about it called Red Harvest." The spy droid asked. The sickness was an infectious viral agent created through the powers of Sith alchemy that attacked biological tissue and transformed its victims into undead monstrosities. The disease was originally created by the Sith Lord Darth Dreer on Odyssey Froston some 4,000 years ago and was intended to grant immortality to its crafter. Dreer's initial experiments resulted in failure and the Sith Lord himself fell victim to his creation, and over 1,000 years later, during the period of unrest following the Great Galactic War, the Sith Lord Darth Scabrous attempted to recreate Dreer's disease in the hope that he would be able to succeed where his predecessor had failed. Scabrous likewise failed to create a path to immortality and in the process unleashed the virus upon the unsuspecting students and staff of the Odyssey Froston Sith Academy. Before long, all of the Sith acolytes and masters on the planet died and were born anew as cannibalistic monstrosities, motivated only by the will to eat. Nekesti said in one breath before taking a deep breath of much-needed air and continued. The disease itself was created through the usage of Sith alchemy and activated by the Murakami orchid, a highly Force-sensitive black flower. Victims of the plague suffered numerous, extremely painful side effects prior to death and became mindless monstrosities post-mortem. The virus itself was fully self-aware and utilized the undead to spread the pathogen and either transform or eat any who were able to avoid infection. Due to the extremely quick rate of transmission and the difficulty of isolation, successful treatment of the disease was very rare, although one could be prevented from contracting the virus by injecting an antivirus intravenously. Those who were already infected had little chance of survival. I don't see how a now extinct disease is a matter of importance, since the ritual needs a Murakami orchid to make it any kind of threat to sentient life, and even then any Sith dumb enough to figure out the ritual would know that you need the still beating heart of a Force user that was bonded with the orchid to get anything useful from it. And didn't the Republic order that entire system the orchid came from to be destroyed? The normally playful Nekesti was replaced with Darth Nekesti, Dark Lord of the Reborn Sith. His mind was going faster than the speed of light trying to figure out why this was even brought up to him. "Master, while I was going through the file from the GD Meatbags archives, I found a file titled Murakami Orchid and it was updated only 7 Galactic Standard months ago." The loyal spy droid explained the file contained the names of 5 GD that have bonded with the orchids and they have even more in storage at the GD temple on Coruscant. Nekesti was baffled at the stupidity of the GD. Why would the self-proclaimed peacekeepers of the galaxy would hold onto a literal ticking time bomb? Were that arrogant that they thought that in the case of another outbreak, they could stop it when they kept the fucking detonator in close proximity to the most populated planet in the galaxy. Boy, should he. The uncharacteristic cold glare that promised untold pain and agony made her rethink finishing her sentence. Returning to his thoughts, Nekesti pondered on what to do about the stupidity of the GD. Negotiation with the entirety of the GD Council would be futile. Those Pampas arrogate ingrates would be foolish. The green toad they call their Grand Master is the only one that has a brain. I could just sack the GD temple. But that could cause a war, or I could do a hit and run on the temple. The Jedi nor the Republic will travel into the unknown regions, due to most of it being uncharted to their knowledge, Nikesti thought. Nikesti decided to return to the Predetto meditate on this matter. The Necrons would make it to the throne room, and the crypt tunneler collapsed the escape tunnels. All caught up. Alice, Necron Overlord and Necron warriors. Yes, C'tan, I shall redirect your forces toward the throne room, the Necron Overlord said. The C'tan has commanded that we redirect ourselves toward the throne room, drop whatever you're doing, and converge on the throne room, the Overlord relayed via telepathy. Clink clink. The Overlord looked down at the thermal detonation that landed in front of his feet and kicked it into the crowd of followers of Malak that looked like they had seen a ghost and charged at them. The ones that escaped the flayed ones. Boom, the thermal detonator exploded, killing all but 5 of the followers of Malak. The Overlord threw his staff of light like a spear that tore through 2 of the followers of Malak like hot butter, impaling them to the wall. With his weapon across the room, the Overlord used his bare hands to slaughter the last 3 followers of Malak. The remaining 3 followers of Malak, once they got the bearing back, saw the Overlord charging them, and futility unloaded their blaster's ammo into the Necron Overlord. The blaster bolts either bounced off of his armor or phased through him, but they didn't stop his charge. Once the Overlord was within grabbing range of the followers of Malak, he grabbed the only female follower in the group by her breast and crushed them before ripping them off and throwing her to the ground to bleed out. He then grabbed the last 2 followers of Malak, who froze up at the Necron's brutal dispatching of their comrade by the neck, and ripped their heads off and dropped their corpses to the ground. The Overlord was about to leave from the throne room, but he felt a hand grab his leg. Looking down, he saw that it was the female whose breasts he removed. She was in a growing pool of blood, yet she still had the will to fight, and she proved it when she tried to shoot the Overlord in the face, but he grabbed the barrel of the blaster and crushed it. You fight even though I have removed your breast, and you're bleeding out, very impressive, the Overlord said in a deep voice that echoed off of the walls of the palace. Overlord warp her to the NEM, it already knows what experiment I wanted to do, Nikesti's voice echoed through his head. The Overlord, as much as he wanted to kill the woman, lacked the ability to disobey his C'tan. Pride of the Sith, Nikesti's meditation chamber. Nikesti could be found meditating on his throne. He was conflicted on how to go about getting the Murakami Orchid from the Jedi's hands, along with the ones who bonded with them. While he could wage open war on the Jedi and Republic, he didn't feel his forces were ready for a war. A hit-and-run sacking of the Jedi's temple would work just as fine, since no matter what he did, he had an escape route in the form of the unknown regions. He already knew that negotiations wouldn't work. The Jedi didn't make deals with the Sith unless they had something of importance to them. After 30 minuets of meditation, Nikesti came to a decision: he would sack the temple. The pros of sacking the temple outweighed the cons. By sacking the temple, he could snatch away the younglings and the holocron with the location of 4 sensitive children and kill a few Jedi. He also wanted to hinder the false Dark Lord of the Sith. What was his name? Implatine, Palpatine, Malantine, Valentine Palpatine Yathatsid, by absorbing the residual dark side energies of the shrine under the temple. Breaking of the 4th wall. What, you thought I didn't figure out his plan? Anyone with half the common sense I have would figure out that he wanted to use the shrine to further cloud the Jedi's minds, make an army of clones that will have secret orders programmed into their minds, that once Pimple sends the order will kill the Jedi in a coward's way, then become the Supreme Chancellor, trick the Jedi into trusting him. Start a war where he leads the opposing sides, sway the child that Pimple Puss's long-dead master created to the dark side, then rule the galaxy, create his own Sith doctrine, and live forever. See simple. Breaking of the 4th wall end. But before I can sack Coruscant, I need to plan out the assault, but first I'll be fair and give them a chance to hand over they zombie flowers and zombie immortality bait, but they'll decline. Even Master Toad will decline, even though he knows the threat of the flowers, thinking I want to start a zombie outbreak and eat the heart of the zombie immortality bait for immortality. Nikesti thought while laughing mentally. Our favorite blonde Sith Lord stood and stretched before phasing out of existence. Pride of the Sith Bridge. Nikesti phased into existence in a sitting position on his throne. Karen, who was antsy about being pulled away from the front lines, was giving Nikesti a look that made him want to increase the number of guards guarding his quarters by another 40 men and a few Necrons. Conan was trying to sit in his lap, but Nikesti, knowing what she really wanted to do, discharged lighting from his body, shocking hit blue-haired woman, which strangely had no effect on her this time around, managed to sit in his lap. Nikesti sighed and massaged his temples to stop him from killing the woman. On the bright side, my crotch is covered in armor, Nikesti thought. Yuyu was to her younger cousin's right, restraining herself from killing Conan, although it was for a different than Nikesti's. Fucking bitch ass fucking fuckity fucking whore, how dare that bitch sit in his lap before I'm going to fucking skin her a fucking live, the profane redhead thought. Nikesti decided to just signal the communications officer to connect them to the Jedi Council Chambers holocom system. Jedi Council Chambers, Coruscant Jedi Temple. Another meeting was going on in the council chambers about things that I won't bore you with when the holocom system activated. Darth Nekesti, nice to see you, it is. Yoda greeted. Let's skip the pleasantries, Yoda. It's come to my attention that you are in possession of a large quantity of Murakami orchids and 5 GD that have bonded with them. I do hope you all understand just what kind of bomb you're sitting on. Nekesti said. We do not know what you're talking about, Sith Siak, a random GD master said before Nekesti gave him the same treatment he did the other GD master. He was strangely fast to deny what I said. Nekesti offhandedly said while stopping Conan from removing his breastplate. There are 3 possible paths you can take in the situation. You can hand the orchids over to me and kill the ones they have bonded with, or destroy the orchids and kill the ones who have bonded with them. Or we can go to war and I have the Mandalorians start another blockade just like they did during the time of the resurgent Sith Empire and one again sack Coruscant, killing the majority of the GD inhabiting the temple, and MHP Nekesti couldn't finish his threat because Conan smashed her lips into his, causing Nekesti kiss back. After a few minutes of kissing Conan, it clicked in his mind what he was doing and he froze, not knowing how to react except for grabbing the blue-haired woman's neck, cutting off her airflow before continuing with what he was saying. And destroying the orchids and bone GD my damn self. Sorry I am, but third option choose we must, Yoda said. Although he didn't want a war on his hands, he also couldn't just kill the GD that bonded with the orchids. Yoda knew what kind of damage the orchids could cause should they fall into the wrong hands. I guess this is Worth and Jedi filth. I will give you a month to say your goodbyes before my fleets crush you pathetic Republic's forces. Oh, and you'll be in need of a new Supreme Chancellor, Nekesti said, his voice being distorted by the dark side, and shut off the holocom system. The members of the GD Council pondered what Darth Nekesti meant when he said that they would need a new Supreme Chancellor. He was currently in orbit of the planet on the Venator-class Star Destroyer, the Resilience. They got their answer when the very same dreadnought crashed into the endless city that covered the planet, causing a massive explosion that rocked the GD temple. A sense of dread washed over the members of the GD Council as they realized just what kind of monster just declared war on them. Lives up to the legacy his masters have left, he has. Go help the survives, we shall, was the calm reply of Yoda, who was already halfway to the chamber doors. Pride of the Sith Bridge. The Bridge of the Pride was deathly silent. Everyone on He Bridge was shocked that their emperor would declare war on the Republic so early. Shouldn't you stop joking, Conan? Now Karen was the first to break the silence, while pointing to the woman whose face now matched the color of her hair. Without saying a word, Nekesti released his hold around Conan's neck, allowing her to breathe. Master, why did you stop? I was so close, the former angle of Ami said in a disappointed tone. Silence fell upon the bridge again, and Nekesti was at a loss of words. And he noticed that his lap was wet, causing him to get a nosebleed. Ayuya and Karen were also at a loss of words. The fact that the blue-haired woman got off to being suffocated temporarily caused their brains to shut down. After a few minuets of silence, Nekesti's comlink chimed, snapping him out of his shock. He quickly answered it, hoping whoever wanted him would take his mind off of what just happened. My lord, the palace just exploded. What should we do? The city is under out control with minimum losses on our part, and the civilians have all been rounded up. The reports from the other generals have confirmed that we have full planetary control. Arano reported. Group all of the civilians outside of the city and have all the other generals do the same with the civilians they have captured. Skylray, order Harriers 30 through 145 from my fleet to land outside of the cities my armies have captured. Then have Harriers 20 through 176 from Taiyuya's fleet land outside of the cities Taiyuya's armies have captured. Then do the same with Harriers 1 to 56 from Karen's fleet. Nekesti commanded. Skylray saluted her emperor and walked off the bridge to relay his orders. I'm going to go change into another set of armor, and Karen, from this point on you are no longer allowed to reprogram targets of high value. Am I understood? Nekesti said in an unamused voice while walking out of the bridge, not even waiting to hear his insane cousin's response. Nekesti's quarters, 1 day and 15 hours later. A day and some hours had passed since Nekesti declared war on the GD and by extension the Republic. Nekesti changed out of the armor that had Conan's Kum on the bottoms and into his original armor set with a tattered black cape bearing the insignia of his empire. The Sith code is a lie. We are reborn. From our ashes we are reborn anew. Through rebirth we gain power. Without power we strike at those who oppose our emperor. Through rebirth the reborn throne is eternal. Nekesti recited the code of the reborn Sith to his apprentices, who were sitting in meditative positions. The Sith code is a lie. We are reborn, meaning as it states the Sith code of old is a lie, and the reborn code is true. The blonde emperor explained. From our ashes we are reborn anew, meaning that from the ashes of the resurgent Sith Empire, we were reborn. Through rebirth we gain power. Through the eternal power of rebirth our power never stops growing. Without power we strike at those who oppose our emperor, meaning all who have drawn power from rebirth, have given their unyielding loyalty to the reborn Sith Emperor, and will strike down those who oppose the emperor without hesitation. For rebirth the reborn throne is eternal, meaning should the emperor be struck down in battle, he will be reborn into the body of one of his voices. Necron, while he was breaking down the code of the reborn Sith, his apprentices were intently listening and taking notes on their data pads. Do not forget the tenets of our code if you hope to make it past apprentice for the day I feel you're ready to take the trials of the emperor, I will have you break down our code. Yes master, the twin Twi'lek apprentices said in unison. Now it's high time you chose in what class you will follow and construct your own lightsabers, I will provide you with a color crystal of your choosing. But first I shall explain the classes. In the days of the resurgent Sith Empire, an acolyte just arriving at one of the Sith academies would choose to be a Sith warrior or a Sith Inquisitor. I shall explain the Sith warrior class first as it is the class I am most familiar with, Necron explained. Long explanation of Sith warrior class warning. I recommend that you read it since the classes will be a major part of the story. The Sith warrior is entrusted with the most important tasks assigned by the Sith Empire. Destroying the Emperor's enemies and enforcing his rule all across the galaxy. They use base emotions such as fear, anger, and hatred to fuel their focus and determination for achieving their goals, and they do it with brutal efficiency. The Sith warrior is a master of domination and control, intent on utterly annihilating his enemies. The warrior has clear goals and seeks the most direct confrontational approach. Despite focusing mainly on negative emotions to fuel attacks, the Sith warrior is capable of showing much loyalty and determination to further the Empire's purposes. While some Sith serve obediently, enacting the letter of a master's law, others risk plotting to destroy this overseer and take that power for themselves. Others may carry such rebellion even further, with unwhispered aspirations to embrace the light and destabilize the Empire from within. Also known as the champion of the dark side, an unstoppable force of darkness, the Sith warrior is entrusted with the task of destroying the Empire's enemies and enforcing Sith domination across the galaxy. The warrior channels the destructive emotions of fear, anger, and hatred to purge weakness from body and mind and become a being of pure brutal efficiency. Destined to eradicate the incompetent chaos created by the Jedi, the Sith seek to rule the galaxy through power and intimidation. The armies of the Sith Empire are trained to accomplish this task, but they require the leadership of bold Sith warriors, loyal and mighty overlords, who will drive them to conquest and victory. These cold-blooded conquerors waste no time with cunning manipulations and carefully crafted plans. Sith warriors crush their opponents and stride toward their goals with dreadful determination, leaving ruin and annihilation in their wake. Emanating awe and terror at every step, they accept nothing but absolute obedience from their followers. In turn, Sith warriors can serve as loyal subjects to their own dark masters, often surprising enemies and allies with their rigorous honor and perfect discipline. Whether they align their ambitions with those of the Dark Council or become renegades in pursuit of their own goals, they are never far from the action. Their fierce hatred of the Jedi keeps Sith warriors at the forefront of any conflict with the Republic. The passion to eradicate the Jedi Order fuels many of their actions, but that does not make them single-minded fools. Ultimately, the destiny of any Sith warrior is his or her own to choose, and woe to those who would stand in his way. They are ruthless. A natural leader in any context, a Sith warrior inspires both fear and undying loyalty into their followers and allies. Though they rarely exercise patience for incompetence or indecisiveness, warriors have realized the importance of strength in numbers in their war with the Jedi, and have learned to accept and sometimes even encourage their comrades, whether they are like-minded Sith, ruthless bounty hunters, or others who embrace the darkness. Still images of Sith warriors capture their passion and vigor in war. Bold lightsaber tactics and surprising bursts of force power force their foes to stay on the defensive until they are weakened and summarily destroyed. Though their saber tactics are always aggressive, some Sith warriors choose to dual-wield or adopt other non-traditional fighting styles to accentuate their combat prowess. Despite their reliance on their strength in the Force, warriors have no compunction about donning heavy and intimidating suits and armors. Unthreatened by the use of technology for biological augmentation, warriors' vestments often make use of dangerous and experimental components, which imbue the wearer with immense strength and fortitude. The Sith warriors' skills with a lightsaber are unrivaled. Driving at their enemies with strong crushing blows, the warrior quickly beats their foes into submission or death. Though the lightsaber is the warrior's primary method of attack, they also uses their dark command of the Force to paralyze, terrify, and kill. Protected by heavy or medium armor depending on their subclass and their powers of intimidation, the warrior wades into the thick of the fight and unleashes pure hatred and fury to eliminate all who would stand against them. The warrior's command of the Force is ruthlessly geared towards attacks that inflict pain and suffering. Choking a victim is not only an effective way to defeat them, but also an effective way of getting them to see one's point of view. Against weak and unworthy targets, the warrior's force choke can kill in an instant. There is perhaps nothing so terrifying as having a dark Sith warrior hurtling through the air toward you with their lightsaber smashing down. Such a forceful attack immediately puts adversaries on the defensive and sometimes ends the fight outright. Channeling their fury, the warrior can release an explosion of dark energy, stunning nearby enemies, allowing a quick follow-up to finish them with unstoppable strikes from their lightsaber. Sith warriors use a rage system to fuel their abilities. Rage is generated by basic attacks and certain abilities such as Force Charge or Assault. Rage can be built up, but it has a cap and it goes down slowly over time when out of combat. Warriors excel in melee combat, and a warrior out of range of his or her targets is out of his or her element. Warriors can quickly enter the fray with Force Charge, build up rage with Assault, and spend that rage on powerful attacks like Vicious Lash and Smash. Necron finished and unsealed a water bottle, then proceeded to gulp down its watery contents. Now with each class there are two advanced classes, Sith Juggernauts and Sith Marauders for Sith warriors. For example, I was originally trained in the ways of the Juggernaut, while Ta Yuyu was trained in the ways of the Marauder. The advanced classes each have 3 sub-classes. The 2 Juggernaut skill trees are Vengeance and Immortal. The shared Juggernaut and Marauder skill tree is Rage. While the 2 Marauder skill trees are Annihilation and Carnage. The shared Marauder and Juggernaut skill tree is Rage. I'll start with the Juggernaut advanced class first and its sub-classes, Necron said. Sith who train in the stalwart arts of the Juggernaut boast unrivaled stamina in battle. Through diligence and clarity, Juggernauts shape the Force to their will to shrug off damage that would destroy others and fill foes with doubt and despair. Protecting their allies and punishing their adversaries, Juggernauts charge into the thick of any fray. All Sith Juggernauts learn to move in heavy armor and build extra energy to perform spectacular feats. Juggernauts can opt to learn the ways of vengeance, making them into crushing forces that pursue their prey with single-minded fury, the art of the immortal, fearing no enemy and keeping lesser allies from harm, and rage. Subduing cowering foes with lightsaber strikes and crushing them with the Force. He or she would use the Force to protect their allies and to punish their adversaries, unlike the Sith Marauder, who would use the Force for more damaging abilities. They charge into the thick of any fray and take the brunt of the assault and are even able to drain the energy of their enemies to further strengthen their resolve. Vengeance Juggernaut stops at nothing to crush enemies, obliterating them with heavy hits. They are widely considered to titter on the thin line of the Juggernaut and the Marauder. Immortal Juggernauts use the power of the Force to increase the warrior's survivability in battle. Also known as the Stalwart Defender, when they are on the battlefield, they lead the charge into enemy lines, using their abilities to shrug off wounds that would be otherwise fatal any other being. The path of the Rage Juggernaut allows the warrior greater control of the Force and further mastery of the Shaicho form. Necron once again unseals a water bottle and gulps down its contents. Wielding 2 lightsabers and unmatched aggression, Sith trained as Marauders slice through enemy ranks, dealing death with merciless efficiency. Whether annihilating a squad of Republic troops or cutting down a single Jedi, the Marauder sees and exploits every weakness to exact the greatest toll. Never hesitating, never faltering, there is no swifter bringer of pain in the galaxy. All Sith Marauders can wield 2 lightsabers in combat, crushing their foes with superior speed and becoming a terror on the battlefield. Marauders can opt to learn the ways of annihilation, learning the Gyro lightsaber techniques and inflicting traumas upon their enemies. Carnage, specializing in swift movement and acrobatics to obliterate foes before they can react. And Rage, subduing cowering foes with lightsaber strikes and crushing them with the Force. Now onto the Sith Inquisitor. Sinister, deceptive, prodigy of Force power are all used to describe a Sith Inquisitor. The history of the Sith Empire is fraught with scheming politics and dark secrets, the lifeblood of the Sith Inquisitor. Treachery hides around every corner in the Empire's dark corridors, and survival depends on an individual's natural cunning and the will to manipulate and defeat their enemies and allies alike. Sith Inquisitors are a class of powerful Force wielders within the Sith Empire, operating primarily within the upper echelons and political circles, relying on their natural cunning and ambitious drive to succeed. In contrast to their counterparts, the Sith warriors, Inquisitors specialized in Force abilities as opposed to martial might, and many would devote much time to researching new skills to survive in the cutthroat Sith political environment. Regardless of potential, few acolytes succeeded in facing the rigorous trials to become Sith Inquisitors. Only the most determined acolytes attained such an achievement, but these Sith were often the ones to watch. On the battlefield, Inquisitors were a spectacle to behold, channeling vast amounts of dark side Force energy to create massive storms of Force lightning, or draining the life force of enemies to feed themselves and their allies. Channeling this Force energy, seething sparks of lightning explode from the Inquisitors' fingertips and wrap their enemies in tendrils of pure Force energy. Because Inquisitors can twist the Force into lightning to stun, subdue, or destroy their foes, it has become their signature, and those who have experienced the sensation of the Inquisitor's Force lightning and survived forever recoil from the crackling sound of electricity. However, due to their manipulative genius, most Inquisitors preferred a more manipulative operating style, being masters of exploiting both enemies and allies to further their own agendas. To reach the highest echelons of power, the Inquisitor needs more than Force lightning and a razor-sharp mind. The most formidable Inquisitors dare to explore unorthodox practices by investigating the enigmas of the past and by unlocking new powers for themselves. The Force is a source of unlimited potential, a wellspring Inquisitors tap and bend to their will. Such intensity allows Sith Inquisitors to become architects of the Empire's future or simply the architects of their own destruction. The destruction Sith Inquisitors leave in their wake rarely allows for the survival of any recorded images. In the cases where the Inquisitor's fury has been caught on holo, however, the daunting presence and the awe-inspiring power at the Inquisitor's disposal present a striking picture. Whether the Inquisitor wields a lightsaber with lightning-sharp attacks or just Force lightning itself, it's always a dazzling display of deadly energy. The clothing choices of Sith Inquisitors were often very calculated, with their elaborate robes designed to both illustrate their sophisticated tastes and desire for political domination, but also being practical and flexible to facilitate their stunning acrobatic movements in combat. Some Inquisitors had been known to take this desire for personal expression to the absolute limit, favoring attire designed to inspire sheer terror in those they come into contact with. Sith Inquisitors often favored double-bladed lightsabers, or saber staffs, in combat. In addition to wielding such an unorthodox weapon, Sith Inquisitors often utilized much more esoteric and customized models of such armament, especially in contrast to the more technical and pragmatic weapons favored by Sith warriors. Featuring such details as exposed crystal chambers or artificially generated Force lightning running through the hilt. Whether facing a traitorous fellow Sith or a crowd of Republic soldiers, the Inquisitor fights with unlimited fury to create a storm of destruction. Expertise in conducting Force energies further allows Inquisitors to draw upon the life essence of themselves and others. This energy can be channeled to bolster their powers, harm their foes, and even to reinvigorate their allies. An Inquisitor's skills with a lightsaber are equally impressive. Often wielding a double-bladed lightsaber, Inquisitors use quick, guileful, and lethal maneuvers to strike their enemies down with astonishing speed. Jolts of electrical energy vault from the Sith Inquisitors' fingertips to weaken and often paralyze opponents. Many of the Inquisitors' attacks make use of this skill. Charging their own bodies up with massive current, Sith Inquisitors are capable of releasing a wave of Force energy to blast everyone and everything in their vicinity. This explosive voltage not only drains the life of the Inquisitors' enemies, but often knocks them to the ground as well. Focusing Force energies to control the flow of air, Sith Inquisitors can incapacitate their foes by lifting them off the ground and encircling them in a small or large storm of energy. By the time the targets return to the fight, the Inquisitors are more than prepared to finish them off. Once again Makesti unsealed a water bottle and downed its contents in one gulp. Ah, the wonders of sealing. I'm going to need to buy more water bottles after this. He thoughts. Now as with the Sith warrior, Inquisitors have two advanced classes, Sith Sorcerer and Sith Assassin, and those advanced classes each have 3 sub-classes. Take Karen for example, she is the pinnacle of Sith sorcerers. Despite her annoying personality, she has mastered the 3 sub-classes of the sorcerer and is currently the strongest sorcerer in the Empire. He explained, getting nods from his apprentices who have been intently listening to their master. The dark side holds dangerous secrets and immense power. The Sith sorcerer draws energy from the Force's forbidden depths, mastering techniques that sap and drain enemies as they invigorate allies or simply wreak utter devastation. The air around a sorcerer crackles with lightning, and all foolish enough oppose a sorcerer know suffering on a vast scale. All Sith sorcerers embrace the power of the Force and can opt to learn the arts of lightning, unleashing powerful storms and crushing opponents, corruption, binding a sorcerer's life force, and strengthening allies through rituals that mitigate blows and knit flesh, and madness, afflicting targets with nightmares that cripple their combat prowess and drain them of strength. Now onto the Sith Assassin. The subtle and deadly hand of the Sith Order, a Sith Assassin stops at nothing to win. Assassins leap from the shadows, channeling Force lightning through their dual-bladed lightsabers to disable and drain their enemies. They are masters of subterfuge, treacherous and unseen, feared by even the most terrible opponents. All Sith Assassins use the Force to conceal themselves and move invisibly, as well as learn to use double-bladed lightsabers. In addition, assassins can opt to study the arts of deception, obscuring their movements and ambushing their enemies, darkness, bolstering assassins' defenses as they shock opponents in melee, and madness, afflicting targets with nightmares that cripple their combat prowess and drain them of strength. Speed and deception are the tools in the assassin's arsenal. Whether using stealth to infiltrate a Republic base and remove a high-profile target or tactfully entering a large-scale battle, the assassin's double-bladed lightsaber flashes with deadly precision to provide a relentless offense and, when necessary, a formidable defense. The assassin can channel the Force just as easily, mentally assaulting an enemy and manipulating a confrontation to ensure his or her side maintains the upper hand. This ability also extends to channeling Force power directly into the assassin's lightsaber in preparation for especially devastating attacks. This time Nekesti didn't unseal a water bottle since his mouth didn't dry out from that explanation. Or you can choose to be trained in all of the classes and their advanced and sub-classes. Let it be known if you choose this path there is no going back and I will not be merciful in your training. Nekesti warned. Karen and Shay glanced at each other and nodded before they spoke in unison. We would like to be trained in all of the classes. Nekesti unsealed a large scroll with lightsaber components written in big bold letters and unfurled it on the ground and channeled his chakra into each storage seals. In a large puff of smoke a massive pile of every lightsaber component needed to make every known variation of lightsabers. You all know the process of making a saber, so all that's left is for you to choose what color crystal you want, Nekesti said, while pointing to the neatly organized piles of color crystals. The Ai twins looked through the solid color crystals but found none that they liked, so they moved on to the double-colored crystals. Karen found a red-black centric crystal, while Shay found a pure black crystal. The twins presented the crystals to their master who laughed and sealed up the piles of color crystal that the twins didn't pick, getting confused looks from them. If you're going to be trained in each class you'll need more than one variation of saber to do so have fun with that, Nekesti laughed while walking out of his quarters toward the bridge. When Nekesti walked into the bridge, Skylray was waiting for him by his throne. Status report. The ships you ordered down to the surface have rejoined the fleet and are awaiting further orders, my liege, Skylray reported, awaiting further orders. Nekesti hummed and thought, Skylray, what are the names of the most influential Hutts, crime lords, and slavers in the known space? Legitimate or illegitimate Hutts, my lord? The redhead supreme commander of Imperial Fleet asked, getting a confused look from her emperor. I thought all Hutts dabbled in criminal activities. The blonde emperor was baffled at the thought of alleged Hutt. Most do, but there is one Hutt that does not have a hand in any illegal activities, and if he does he hides it very well. His name is Papara Angeliac D'Aresto, and main home was Aspire on Nar Shaddaa. Of all the Hutts, Papara is considered to be the most trustworthy of the species. Skylray explained while producing a data pad and projecting holographic likenesses of many different people of various species. Nekesti nodded and motioned for her to continue. Pointing to the human male Alexei Garin, the current underlord of the Black Sun Crime Syndicate. Rumor has it that he's Force-sensitive but wasn't identified by the Jedi at an early enough age. The next face was a Hutt with white and grey hair. Skylray, does that Hutt have dreadlocks and a braided beard? Nekesti asked. He rubbed his eyes to make sure he wasn't seeing shit. Yes he does, my lord. This is Zorba Desilijik, leader of Desilijik clan, the most influential of the Hutt clans. As of last 54 years they have fallen under hard times financially, although they were having hard times well before he became the leader, since he wasn't the leader until about 934 plus years ago. Zorba is not very well liked and viewed as a mutant among the Hutts due to him having the recessive trait of hair. And might I add that other Hutts are not afraid to state their dislike of Zorba, although those who do normally go missing within a standard week. The last part pissed Nekesti off to no known end. Those genderless worms are just like the villagers, Nekesti thought, causing waves of anger to flow into the Force bond he shared with Taiyuya and Karen, scaring both of them. Taiyuya did her best to send calming waves of the Force through the bond, hoping it would calm her cousin down, while Karen sent mental pictures of herself and Conan through the bond, getting a horrified look from Taiyuya, who was next to her fellow Redeed, and made a torrent of blood to blast out of their male cousin's nose, propelling him out of his throne and into the bulkhead of the bridge, where he passed out from either his mind being overloaded by the images it saw or blood loss with a perverted look on his face. Skylray, who was kneeling in front of Nekesti, was covered from head to toe in blood. Despite being covered in her master's lifeblood, she rushed to his side and yelled for one of the bridge's personnel to call a medic. 2 weeks later, Pride of the Sith Infirmary. 2 weeks had passed since Nekesti passed out from blood loss, and Karen and Taiyuya had to step up and run Nekesti's empire while he was recovering, and they hated every moment of it. They had to do holowork, Star Wars version of paperwork, put down 12 insurrections, do more holowork, visit the 100+ Sith academies, and finally do even more holowork. The Pride of the Sith, along with Taiyuya and Karen's flagships and fleets, were currently en route to Zajaria to sell some of the slaves from Tathal IV. They were using the hyperspace lane that passed through the Kali system to exit the unknown regions and to meet up with Clan Ordo and Terra Legion at Kali. The entire ship jerked when it was ripped out of hyperspace by a hyperspace mine. Nekesti was forcefully awoken when he was thrown off of his bed. Ugh, what the hell was that? He thought while rubbing the knot on his forehead. He took in his surroundings, wondering why he was in the infirmary when he remembered the images that Karen had sent him, causing a small line of blood to drip from his nose. He pushed those images into the back of his mind and walked out of the infirmary toward the bridge, intending to find out what caused him to be thrown off of his bed. Bridge. The Pride's bridge personnel were in a state of panic. They didn't hit just one hyperspace mine, they had hit several, which heavily damaged the hyperdrive, and one of the engines was offline. The scene that Nekesti walked into was Taiyuya and Skyray barking orders to the bridge crew. In the process of yelling out orders, Taiyuya and Skyray didn't notice the blonde Dark Lord walk into the bridge, but Karen and Conan did. The red and blue heads attached themselves to Nekesti's chest, with Karen asking if he liked the images, eliciting a tired sigh from Nekesti. Karen's voice alerted the two red heads to Nekesti's presence. Skyray saluted the Emperor, while Taiyuya said, "Good to see your catnap is over, now we don't have to do your homework anymore, I mean." Nekesti's sweat dropped and ignored his vulgar cousin's rant status report. What the hell caused my flagship to throw me out of bed? We were en route to Kaylee to meet up with Clan Ordo and Terra Legion before making our way to Zajaria to sell some slaves when we ran into several hyperspace mines. Our hyperdrive is completely offline and is in immediate need of repairs, and Engine 5 is offline but is not as damaged as the hyperdrive and can be repaired later. We are in the Kaylee system, but the planet is not on any star chart, Skyray reported. Land the Pride, Blade and Cipher on the planet and have the rest of the fleet stay in orbit. Then once we are on the surface, I want 1.2 million 20-man scouting party sent out to explore this planet, the Dark Lord commanded. It shall be done, was the Ginger's reply. Taiyuya, Karen, you can also sense the Force presence on the planet as well, correct? Nekesti asked through their bonded. I sensed it, but I paid no mind to it, Nai-chan, was Karen's reply. I was distracted while I was doing your homework, so no, I didn't notice it, complained Taiyuya, who was promptly ignored. I've pinpointed it to a large mass of land, presumably a continent. I'll be leading a large scouting party to find the person and to explore a little. Taiyuya will accompany me. He was cut off by Karen. But Nai-chan, why can't I go with you? Just think about it, we could get lost in the woods for a few hours to have some fun. And that's why Taiyuya is coming with me. At least she doesn't openly show her feeling toward me to the point where I fear sleeping on the same ship as her. She only blushes and says something disrespectful in a vain attempt to hide it, he said, ignoring the blush that made Taiyuya's face match her hair. Nekesti said while looking at said redhead. I don't know what you're talking about, shit for brains. The red-faced girl yelled, further proving Nekesti's point. But Nai-chan, it'll be fun. Your ideal of fun put me into a coma. Nekesti yelled. But I haven't told you what Conan and I tried to do while you were in the coma. Nekesti gained a mortified expression at what his cousin just said. Zap. Nekesti hit Karen with millions of volts of electricity, sending her into a bulkhead. Damn it, woman, can't I just peacefully be in a coma without either you or Conan trying to rape me? You could try asking, damn it. Would you say yes if we did? Hell no. Karen deflated before she perked up and said, then I'll try harder to get you to like me. We have to repopulate our clan and Nai-chan could. No. Please. No. Please. No. Pretty please. No. We can play master and slave. No. We can play doctor. That's the last thing I'd ever play with you. No. Please. No. Please. No. No. Yes. Fuck yay. Still no. Aw. This is what Nekesti had to deal with in the time it took for the Pride to reach the unknown planet surface. Unknown planet, large landmass, Pride of the Sith boarding ramp. Once they reached the surface, Nekesti quickly sent Karen away and him and Taiyuya made their way to the boarding ramp where the scouting parties were waiting. Each 20-man party was equipped with flares, cages for wild life, Karen's idea, subterranean scanners, mobile research equipment, medpacks, and camping gear. The roar of starfighters flying over them preforming aerial reconnaissance could be heard as they left the side hangars. In the front of the 1.2 million soldiers was Nekesti and Taiyuya party. Speaking of the two Sith Lords, they were sharing a speeder since Taiyuya's was on her flagship, not that she was complaining. Apart. Nekesti commanded and gunned his speeder forward, his party following closely behind him in diamond formation. The other parties all went in different directions, dodging trees and their roots as they sped off. Unknown planet, nightfall. Nekesti, Taiyuya and half their party were sitting around a fire cooking, eating the pre-cooked meals they brought them. The other half were patrolling the area to prevent any of the indigenous wildlife from getting the drop on them. Nekesti was about to retire to his tent when Taiyuya grabbed his shoulder. I am forgetting with mechanisheres, Isra wintien thinkerin, while the red-faced vulgar redhead said, getting a beeped eyebrow from her younger cousin. A little slower please, the blonde said, trying to decipher what she said made his head hurt. Ayuya's face became even redder. I forgot to bring my tent with me, can I share yours? I swear I won't try anything that Karen would. This time Nikesti heard her loud and clear. The blonde smirked. Aside from using me like a teddy bear the other times you've had to bunk with me. The redhead's face invented 20 new shades of red when she heard her cousin bring up the other time she shared a room or tent with him. I don't know what you're talking about, shithead. Now can I share your tent or not? You sure, just don't try to rape me in my sleep. Cuddling is fine, though. Taiyuya's face became even redder and she suppressed a happy smile. Nikesti led Taiyuya to his tent. His tent was big enough to comfortably fit several people in before it became cramped. In the center of the tent was a king-size bed with red sheets and a black cover. But the snap of his fingers, Nikesti's armor was sealed into a seal on his chest and was left in only his boxers. Seeing Nikesti's state of dress, no matter how many times she'd seen him in nothing but his boxers, she still felt like she was going to pull a Hinata and pass out. Are you going to remove your armor because you're not sleeping in your armor? Nikesti, who was already under the covers, said, leaving no room for argument. Ayuya sighed and snapped her fingers, making her armor disappear into a seal on her right breast. Taiyuya was only in panties, leaving her 32E breast for all to see. Well, she'd likely kill anyone other than Nikesti and Karen if they saw her in her current state of dress. The reason that she didn't wear a bra is, in her words, a bra is uncomfortable under my armor. Not that Nikesti minded, although he would never admit it to her. She climbed on top of Nikesti and laid her head on his chest. You're getting bold, Taiyuya. Shut up, I'm cold and you're warm, was the mumbled reply he got from the redhead, who was quickly being put to sleep by Nikesti's heartbeat. Unknown planet, midnight. Beep beep. Millimeters, 5 more minutes. Beep beep. Turn that shit off, shithead, I'm trying to sleep. Beep beep. Ugh, fine. Nikesti answered his comlink. Millimeters, hello. So you'll sleep in the same bed as her but not me. The holographic form of Karen yelled. She isn't as likely to rape me in my sleep as you are now. What do you want? We're trying to sleep. Nikesti sleepily said, as if it wasn't common knowledge. You let me help you revive our clan one, and I was going to tell you that the majority of this planet's flora are carnivores. Yet that's why I sent you there, so you'd hopefully bite more than you can chew. Now good night. Nikesti crushed the comlink so that she would have to use his helmet's comlink to contact him. He noticed that Taiyuya's face hovering over his. Can I help you? He asked, slightly unnerved by the look in Taiyuya's eyes. They stared into each other's eyes, one in slight fear and the other possessive. Without warning, Taiyuya kissed the younger Uzumaki. Taiyuya was shocked in the figurative sense when she wasn't electrocuted, and Nikesti forced his tongue into her mouth and fought hers for dominance. After a minute of kissing they separated for air, and Taiyuya possessively said, I don't care how many girls you decide to date, but I'm the alpha bitch, got it, or else? Taiyuya's hand moved down to the bulge in Nikesti's boxers and squeezed hard. I'll see if your healing factor can regrow your beep after I've ripped it off, got it. Nikesti instantly nodded his head, yes ma'am. Good boy. Taiyuya kissed him again and laid back down on his chest and fell asleep. Nikesti exhaled a breath he didn't know he was holding. Why are all the redheads in my life crazy, he thought, and fell asleep, deciding not to dwell on it. Unknown planet, noon. Nikesti and Taiyuya were awoken by the screams of their scouting party, roars, and blaster fire. Quickly unsealing their armor, they ran out of the tent to see one of their soldiers being ripped apart by Black Vornskrs. Think Doberman, large nocturnal Force-sensitive canine beast that was native to the planet Merkur and hunted in packs of 5. They used their whip-like, mildly venomous tails to stun prey before finishing it off with their teeth. They were normally sedate during the day, but hunger or other factors would drive them to hunt during daylight hours. That small fact about Vornskrs put both Taiyuya and Naruto on alert. From the way they felt in the Force, they weren't hungry, which meant they're being controlled. Nikesti and Taiyuya shouted at the same times. Kill all but one. They yelled in unison again. The troopers didn't need to be told twice. They opened fire on the Vornskrs, mowing down 2 out of the 5. The third one charged at the closest trooper, but instead of getting a bite of flesh, it got a Vibro's word jammed into its mouth and through its brain. The remaining 2, a male and a female, charged at the 2 Sith Lords, who simply blasted them with red lightning, killing the male and stunning the female. Put the live one in the cage until she wakes up, Taiyuya, and I will be resting in my tent. Wake us when it does, and Sergeant, knock before you enter, Nikesti warned, getting a salute from the sergeant. When they entered the tent they sealed their armor and assumed the position they were in the night before and fell back to sleep. Unknown planet, mid-afternoon. Knock knock. Millimeters. Knock knock. Oh away, we're sleeping. Knock knock, Emperor, the beast has awoken. And we haven't. No, go away before I introduce you to my rancor. As you wish, my lord. With interruption gone, the blonde Dark Lord fell back asleep. Unknown planet, midnight. In the dead of the night a pink figure shrouded in shadows snuck into Nikesti's tent. To a regular Darth the figure would have been undetectable, but unfortunately for her, her targets were in a league of their own and had sensed her approach long before she entered the tent. The figure lifted her blade above her head, fully intending to run both of the bed's inhabitants through. She tried slam the blade downward, but found that she couldn't move her arms or most of her body for that matter. "If we were lesser beings you might have had a chance of killing us," the blonde and red hair couple said in unison, and force pushed their would-be assailant through the tent and into the middle of the camp, where she shakily got to her feet. The red and blonde duo walked out of the tent fully armored and lightsabers ignited. The assailant was a pink-skinned Sith Pureblood. If you want a better description, check my DeviantArt page for the pic. Her black hair was tied into a ponytail and stopped at her shoulders. She wore a black two-piece leather armor with black gauntlets. Her top did very little to hide her impressive bust. "Who are you and why did you attempt to kill my cousin and myself?" Nekesti asked while pointing his blade at her. "Only the strong survive while the weak die, and you're weak while I am strong," she said, while pointing her TONFAS. "Look up a guard Shoto and think instead of a lightsaber it's a blade," at Nekesti. "We shall see," was Nekesti's reply. He made a come here motion with his middle finger and the pureblood Sith was yanked towards him. Nekesti delivered a roundhouse kick straight from the depths of hell that sent the pureblood Sith into a tree. When the roundhouse met with her face she could feel her teeth rattle and a flew out of her mouth, and when she hit the tree she felt like her spine would break and her vision was full of black spots. "I thought you were strong and I was weak. Now get up, slave, and fight," Nekesti taunted. The pureblood Sith tried to push her opponent, but it had no effect and in a second he was in her face, from of which he backhanded her, then kneed her in the stomach, lifting her off her feet and causing blood to fly out of her mouth. Nekesti grabbed her by the neck and slammed her into the ground, causing spider web cracks to form and even more blood to fly out of her mouth. The blonde Dark Lord jumped back, avoiding being split in two when the pureblood swung one of her tonfas at him. Interesting, she held onto her weapons even after the damage I've dished out. Nekesti thought while pulling out a curved lightsaber and cutting her blades to the hilt and Sparta kicking her across the camp and through a tree which fell on her legs, causing her to scream. Kyuubi flinched when the tree fell on the pureblood, knowing the feeling of her legs being crushed. Nekesti, not caring that the pureblood's legs were crushed, approached her and was preparing to end her in the same way she intended to end him and Kyuubi. "Wait!" she yelled, causing Nekesti's saber to stop just short of her chest. "Speak, worm," Nekesti growled out. "You're strong. I wish to join your pack, to grow stronger and give you strong litter," the pureblood said, throwing Nekesti for a loop and causing Kyuubi's eye to twitch. "Pack? Litter?" Nekesti asked, honestly confused. "Yes, your pack, you are traveling in a pack and I believe you call litter children," she said, making Nekesti sweat drop and Kyuubi's eye twitching to get worse. "I know I attract redheads, but this is a bit excessive. I'm attracting red-skinned women now. Why do the crazy ones like me?" Nekesti thought. "This is not my pack. I rule an entire empire and everyone minus the redhead with a twitch are expandable foot soldiers and you can take that up with the twitching redhead at your own risk," Nekesti said while he lifted the tree that was crushing her legs with one hand and throw it. The expandable foot soldiers looked on in awe at the strength of the leader. 2 days had passed since Nekesti brutally beat the pureblood Sith into the ground. Speaking of said pureblood, she was currently in the medbay having the bones in her legs reconstructed along with every other injury the blonde emperor inflicted on her. The doctors in the medbay commented that they were impressed that she even survived the beating that their emperor gave her, since the gravity on his homeworld is 20x that of the average planet. Speaking of emperors, Nekesti was currently in a holocall with a certain lavender-eyed heiress. "Yes, I know you're busy with the side project I gave you, but war is on the horizon. We need your clan skills and the firepower of your flagship for the first strike. I can't just drop what I'm doing to assist you, Naruto-kun, you know how important this is to me. I'll make it up to you any way I can. I need the entire Dark Council assembled by the time I reach Drahman Cause. I will hold you to that." Anata could be seen shouting orders to her bridge crew to plot a course to the Drahman system. "I'll see you soon," Naruto said as he shut off his holoterminal. "How long have you been standing there, Skylray?" Nekesti asked without turning around. Since the argument started," the redhead answered. "Forget what you heard," Nekesti commanded. "Forget what?" Skylray asked. "Is the damage repaired?" "Yes." "Have the scouting parties returned?" "Yes." "Did they find anything of interest?" "Yes." "Were there casualties?" "Yes." "Have you plotted a course to Javan's location?" "Yes." "Are you saying yes to everything I'm asking because you want a raise or do you want something else?" "Yes." "What do you want?" "A raise and date with you when we get to Drahman Cause." "My lord." "Emperor." "Why is it always redeeds? Damn you, father." Nekesti suddenly yelled, causing Skylray to jump back in fright. "So about that date and raise?" asked Kyuubi, "then we'll talk." "I already said yes, shithead." On second thought, ask me again when we are on Drum and Cause. As you wish. The redhead bowed and left Nekesti to his devices. It's always redeeds. Why can't I get a nice brunette or a blonde? Well, I have Hinata, but even she has a few screws loose, Nekesti complained as his flagship entered hyperspace. Drum and Cause City, Imperial Citadel, Dark Council Chambers. 1 week had eclipsed since Nekesti's departure from the unknown planet, which he still hadn't gotten around to naming. He had met up with Javan on the 5th day at Kaylee. Speaking of Kaylee, since the Jedi didn't know that they were at war with Nekesti's empire, they assumed that he was there for diplomatic reasons. Oh, how wrong they were. FLASHBACK. Since this will take up the entirety of the chapter, I'm not going to italicize it. 5 days ago, in orbit of Kaylee. The pride of the Sith dropped out of hyperspace behind the Mandalorian fleet. Nekesti had ordered the rest of his fleet and Karen and Taiyuya's flagships and fleets to stay back and flank the Republic fleet and to activate their gravity well generators just in case they try to flee. Emperor, the Mandalorian fleet is attempting to hail us, the communications officer said. Patch them through, you fool. Taiyuya shouted. Davin's holographic form appeared on the holoprojector status report. Nekesti commanded. The Republic strike force was decimated upon our arrival. We thought that was the last we would see of them on this planet, but as you can see, an entire Republic fleet was waiting 2 parsecs away. They took us by surprise at first, but after a brief skirmish we agreed on a ceasefire, Javan reported. Have you identified the flagship of the fleet? Transmitting the information now. Excellent. Nekesti out. The communications officer shut off the holoprojector. Skylray, once we clear the Mandalorian fleet, fire the ion cannon, then send the boarding parties. At once, my lord. You heard your Emperor, men, get to it. Republic fleet, Republic flagship. The flagship of the Republic fleet, the Peacekeeper, was a Mandator 2 class star DREADNOUGHT, pride of the core for anyone who plays the Republic at war mod. The Peacekeeper was 19,000 meters in length, 4,000 meters smaller than the Pride of the Sith, but just as heavy armed. It had 13,525 heavy, medium, and light TURBOLASCRS in total, fire, linked in groups of 5, 500 assault concussion missile tubes with 10 missiles each, fire linked in groups of 10. 100 ion cannons, 500 anti-starfighter cannons, and 15 tractor beams. Its complement consisted of 1,000 Volts wing fighters, 1,138 Eta-2 Actis interceptors, 500 ARC-170 fighter bombers, 2,000 Lot gunship variants, 70,000 Republic Sodders, 1,000 ATRTs, 400 ATs, and 200 SFA artillery. The vessel usually had a crew of 300,000, but most of its systems could be controlled by AI, and a skeleton crew of 70,000 could smoothly operate the vessel in battle. The Peacekeeper was escorted by 500 Venator-class star destroyers and 100 Acclamator-class assault ships. Venators were 1,137 meters in height, 548 meters in width, and 268 meters in height. The armament of a single Venator-class star destroyer consisted of 8 DBY-827 heavy dual turbolaser turrets, 2 medium dual turbolaser cannons, 52-point defense dual laser cannons or turbolasers, and 4 heavy proton torpedo tubes. The Venator class's 8 heavy dual turbolaser turrets were its main weapons and had 2 tracking modes. In its precise, long-range tracking mode, the DBY-827 could hit a target vessel at a range of 10 light minutes. During close-range fights, the turrets could rotate in 3 seconds with their fast tracking mode. The DBY-827 had 7 different power settings. This allowed the Venator's pilots and gunners to select a range of destruction, from a small strike to a vaporizing blow. As a true warship, the Venator-class star destroyer could divert almost all of its reactor output to its heavy turbolasers when needed. While designed primarily for ship-to-ship combat, the Venator had secondary roles ranging from starfighter carrier to military transport and battleship escort. The expanded carrier role made the Venator class popular amongst Jedi starfighter aces. Because of its carrier role, the Venator class featured a novel dual bridge tower design. The port tower was the starfighter command bridge, while the starboard tower served as a standard helm and command bridge. Typical Republic Venator carried a complement of 420 fighters. 192 Voltswinger V-19 Torrent starfighters, 192 Eta-2 Actis class interceptors, and at least 36 ARC-170 starfighters. The ship also typically maintained a variety of shuttles in its hangars. Since it was capable of entering a planet's atmosphere and landing on its surface, the pre-Imperial Venator class had a standard complement of 40 Lot I gunships and 24 military walkers for planetary operations. The cruiser was also capable of holding 1 prefabricated garrison base for long-term battles on planets. The Acclamator-class assault transport was 752 meters long, 460 meters in width, and 200 meters in height. Its mission profile required it to both carry troops and engage enemy starships. The Acclimator was designed to assault contested systems, break hostile orbital blockades, and land troops directly on the battlefield. Consequently, the Acclimator favored a wedge or dagger-shaped design due to its effectiveness that allowed concentration of firepower while minimizing target profile. The underside of the Acclimator was dominated by a large assault hangar capable of offloading an entire legion of troops and their vehicles in short order. Most of the passenger and barrack decks were located on the upper levels of an Acclimator-class ship. Acclimator-class ships had berths for 16,000 troopers, the equivalent of an entire legion or brigade and its support personnel. They also carried 80 aircraft and 84 armored vehicles, such as the 8 Sva walkers, used to provide troopers with heavy battlefield support. In addition to ground landings, Acclimator-class ships were capable of water landings. Each Acclimator-class ship held 320 speeder bikes, used by Republic troops for fast battlefield reconnaissance and patrol duties. 80 low-altitude assault transports, of which around 66 were infantry gunships and around 14 were vehicle carriers, were carried to insert personnel, vehicles, and cargo into battle zones, in addition to providing close air support. These ships were armed with 4 heavy torpedo launch tubes, 24-point defense cannons, rated at 6 megatons per shot, and 12 quad turbolaser turrets, each rated at a maximum of 200 gigatons per shot. The hull armor of Acclimator-class vessels was impregnated with ultra-dispersive neutronium that withstood and spread massive energy blasts. On the bridge of the Peacekeeper Jedi Master Count, Dooku stood next to his newest apprentice Shakti, watching the ship that was identified as the flagship of Darth Nekesti, the pride of the Sith. Dooku was a man of average height standing proudly at 5'6". Dooku sported a dark brown mop of graying hair and beard. He wore the dark black variant of the standard Jedi robes, with a lightsaber with a curved hilt strapped to his belt. Shakti was a red-skinned Togruta with white markings and grey stripes on her lekku, which extended to her shoulders. She was 5'8", being just an inch taller than her master. She wore brown Jedi robes and a standard lightsaber strapped to her belt. Master Dooku, the ship that just dropped out of hyperspace, is hailing us, a random ensign informed. Best not keep them waiting, ensign. Sith are known for their short temper. The holographic form of Nekesti in all his intimidating armored glory appeared from the holoprojector. Emperor, it is a pleasure to meet your acquaintance. I am Count Dooku, Jedi Master, and this is my Padawan Shakti. Shakti belligerently bowed when her master introduced her. Nekesti beat an eyebrow. Let's skip the pleasantries, apprentice of Yoda, we both have places to be and things to do. What is you want? Dooku raised a hand, stopping his apprentice from making the situation go from peaceful to violent. As you know, your Mandalorian allies are using a gravity well generator to prevent this fleet from leaving the system, and we would like to avoid unnecessary violence and loss of life on both our parts. Nekesti chuckles, you seem to have me confused with someone that gives a fuck about expandable ships, and man. Nekesti paused and cupped his chin in thought, although I would much rather we discuss the terms of you leaving the system with all your ships intact in person on my flagship. That is agreeable. I shall board a shuttle T, not you, her. Nekesti pointed to Shakti. Dooku's eyes narrowed. I insist that I be the one to meet with you. My Padawan is not experienced enough to handle a situation such as this. It is not a matter of experience, it's a matter of trust, and I trust you about as much as I would a Hutt. Your Padawan has little hopes of assassinating me or besting me in combat, so you will send her or else I will order my ships to open fire, Nekesti threatened. Dooku was stuck in a rock and a hard place. On one hand he could refuse, and he could start a war. Their communications have been jammed for the better part of 7 weeks, so they don't know about the war, and on the other, he could agree and send his apprentice right into a den of Nexu. Either way he lost. If he chose the former, it would result in well over 1 million lives would be lost, while chose the latter, then he would potentially lose only 1 life. It wasn't hard for him to decide that 1 life wasn't worth millions. My apprentice will be en route to your flagship within the hour. Nekesti flashed him a mocking grin. I'm glad you see things my way, Dooku. Nekesti ended the transmission, leaving the master and Padawan to the quiet bridge. Pack your things, Padawan, this will most likely be the last time we see each other, Dooku impassively ordered and left the bridge. But Nekesti, 1 hour later. Nekesti stood next to Skylray, impassively watching the prone Republic fleet. Query. The shuttle has landed in the hangar, Master. Shall I give the meat bags my special greeting, Master? Nekesti ignored his homicidal HK unit and pressed a button that opened a channel with every ship in his fleet of 300. All ships, scramble your starfighters and open fire on the Republic fleet. 300 shouts of yes, my Lord. Emperor Mandalore followed. HK. Nekesti spun on his heels and walked toward the bridge's exit with HK-47 following behind him. Hangar. Nekesti, his 2 apprentices, and HK-47 entered the hangar with a PLATOON 36 guards of Dark Honor guards following behind them and 2 lines of 18. Honor guards were loyal to only Nekesti, not even Tayuya, and Karen could command them without Nekesti commanding them to follow their orders. The reason for this was when one or more of the Empire's greatest non-force sensitive warriors they were brought before Nekesti and mentally linked to Nekesti. As a result, they were fanatically loyal to Nekesti, and like the Necrons, they lacked the ability to ever betray him, making them a vital part of his power base. They were perfectly willing to die for their emperor and carried out his every order without question, no matter how trivial they may be. On rare occasions Force users were inducted into the ranks of the Honor Guard, but Nekesti could count the number of Force-sensitive Honor Guards on one hand. Members of the Honor Guard were clad in armored robes of red and crested helmets, while they wielded a variety of different weapons as the situation required. Depending on the environmental conditions, guardsmen and women would don stark white and red marked variations on the standard trooper's armor to distinguish themselves from normal infantry. The primary weapon of choice for the Dark Guard was an electrostaff, though they were proficient in the use of blasters, hand-to-hand, lightsabers, vibroblades, etc. This caused them to be considered deadly opponents unarmed or armed. The locations of the Honor Guard's academies was known only to Nekesti. Prime locations for the academies were planets strong within the dark side. The reason for this was to make Nekesti's exertion of his influence that much easier, and so that he could form bonds with his future guardsmen. The boarding ramp of the Republic attack shuttle lowered, and the Togruta and the human pilot that flew the shuttle descended. "Welcome." Shakti Nekesti said, purposely mispronouncing her name. "But Shakti Sith," she hotly corrected with a glare. "I thought Jedi weren't supposed to lose their temper so easily." Nekesti taunted, causing the Padawan to bare her sharpened teeth, which made a sinister snarl. Observation. "I thought that Jedi meatbags were supposed to remain calm and not show any negative emotions." Taunting statement. "Master, I have come to believe that this meatbag is a defective." Recommendation. "Master, I would highly advise putting the defective meatbag out of its misery." Overjoyed query. "Master, may I terminate the defective?" HK joined in on the taunting of the poor young Togruta. Nekesti chuckled. "No HK, you may not terminate the meatbag, I have plans for her." Shakti was bristling with anger now. Let it be said, Shakti disliked nearly nothing, but she absolutely abhorred being insulted and belittled. Nekesti pretended to not notice the Padawan, who was steadily getting madder and madder by the second, in favor of taunted her with the help of his ever so homicidal and loyal HK droid. Maybe her master sent her over to use with little to no argument because of how much of a disappointment she is. Objection. "No, I don't believe that was the reason, Master. I believe that her skills were so abyssal that he came to the conclusion that she would die when he sent her to us." "Maybe you're right, HK, but I think we are about to find out." Just as Nekesti finished his sentence, one of the Honor Guards blocked a torrent of force lightning meant for Nekesti. Nekesti beckoned for Chse to handle the Padawan. Chse entered the Gyro form and ignited one of the two lightsabers clipped to her hip. The abyss black blade sprung to life. Not wasting a second, Chse forced CHARGED a force jump with a front flip as her opponent, who barely managed ignite her saber, and entered the Makashi opening form to block the strike that would have severed her head. When their blades met, they quickly entered a deadlock, trying to overpower the other. In any other case, Chse would have overpowered the Togruta, but Shakti was unconsciously calling on the dark side to aid her. "Is this all you have to offer, your grunt pathetic?" Chse taunted, using Dun Mach to further anger the Padawan. Growl. Shakti began to push the inverted Twi'lek back, monumentally surprising her with a loud Shakti to land a dark side infused kick that sent her flying towards the bulkhead. Chse righted herself and used the bulkhead as a springboard to launch herself back at her opponent. The Twi'lek began to rapidly spin with her lightsaber positioned in front of her, turning her into a black and red wheel that promised death. Shakti's mind was not nearly clouded enough to attempt to block Chse, so she opted to dodge and hide behind the Republic assault shuttle. Chse carved out the spot that the Togruta was previously occupying and redirected herself with the force so that she was traveling toward the Republic shuttle that Shakti was hiding behind. Sensing the danger she was in, Shakti force jumped away from the shuttle as Chse carved it in half, causing it to explode, engulfing the Twi'lek and sending Shakti careening into the bulkhead. Shakti stood on shaky legs and looked at the Rekage, hoping that the opponent was killed in the explosion. She felt someone tap her on her shoulder and turned her head into a devastating punch that implanted her body into the bulkhead. Before sweat embrace of unconsciousness could claim her, she was struck by torrents of low-powered black force lightning, causing her untold amounts of pain and showing her skeletal system. "Enough." Nekesti yelled, causing Chse to stop electrocuting the Togruta. "Say bowed as you wish, Master." Joyous statement. "That was a wonderful display of force and senseless." Taunting statement. "Master, I believe that meatbag screams would be just as effective in combat as yours." Nekesti's eye twitched. "HK, I swear on the void that if you don't delete that, I will permanently install an HK protocol pacifist package into your behavior core." Fearful statement. The audio files have been deleted. The droid now escort our guest to the med bay. Pride of the Sith jerks knocking everyone off their feet. What the fuck was that? Nikesti shouted. Higher cruise to deck 7 and engine 1. Skylray's voice commanded over the intercom. Nikesti phased out of existence. Bridge. Nikesti appeared on the bridge in an explosion of the dark side, scarring Skylray. I leave you alone for an hour, and now one of the engines have been damaged. And no, the Republic's flagship fired a contented laser beam as she said that a green beam shot past the bridge and hit on of the Harrowers, causing it to explode. Nikesti looked out the viewport with wide eyes. Cloakus and Mini jump behind the Republic fleet. Nikesti ordered. To the uneducated eye the Pride vanished, but to the Admiral of the Republic fleet, it was obvious that the Pride activated a cloaking device. Empty space behind the Republic fleet. The Pride exited hyperspace behind the Republic fleet and turned so that was broadside to Peacekeeper's rear. The Emperor's blade and her fleet of 300 dropped out of hyperspace behind the Republic fleet and immediately opened fire on the rear of the fleet, while the Sith Reborn and her fleet uncloaked itself to the left of the fleet and opening fire on the Republic fleet that was now boxed in. Clouds of starfighters and bombers flew out of the 3-star DREADNAUGHTS. The Pride didn't scramble its starfighters hangars to aid in sending the Republic fleets under and defending their motherships. The 3 Eradicator-class Harrower Star Dreadnoughts entered full broadside on the Republic fleet. The Pride and Blade's first salvo took the Peacekeeper's engines out, leaving the ship dead in the water, while the Sith Reborn's first salvo sent about 10 Venators under and the entire left flanks, 25 acclimators, and disabled its super weapon. But the Peacekeeper was dead in the water and none of its cannons were able to hit targets behind it. The Pride and Blade fired its boarding pods into the Peacekeeper and the backwards flake of the Republic fleet. Each boarding pod carried about 30 troopers and 15 HK droids in them. Once the pod drilled into the hull of the ship, the drill would split into 4 sections and deploy its troopers and droids. Since the 2 flagships were massive and had over 1 million solders on them at all times, the hull of the Republic flagship was covered from bow to stern with boarding pods. If one were to look closely enough, they would have noticed that 3 red and black boarding pods were fired into the Peacekeeper's bridge. End chapter. So this part ends here. If you want to see next part of this series, like the video now and share the story with your friends. Bye bye.